And so it is, beloved masters. Control is out of control on the planet. It is that the more the energy is accelerating into a higher level of awareness and understanding, it is the more that the mind is attempting to find ways to control everything, to control religion, to control education, to control politics, to control everything. Children are being taught not, if you subtract 2 from 4, it leaves 2, but they are being given a page of proof mathematics to show that if you take 2 away from 4, 2 is left. And the control games are saying the technology is simplifying everything in your life. But the techniques of the technology, the limitations of the technology, are creating complications so that people are more separate from themselves and others than ever.
Conference muted.
And so, beloved Master, it is to realize that when you are in control, in the energy of these times, you're out of control. Because the more that you apply control, the less you really are in dominion over your life. And so, control, basically, beloved masters, is a war game. Because it is a game to see who can dominate energy. And it is that within yourself, it becomes the internal war. One side of you is saying, you absolutely have to do it this way. And the other side is arguing, but if you do it that way, it won't work. So, as you begin to really pay attention, control puts everything out of balance. It is, if you would, a very shaky foundation for a dissatisfied life. I can't do anything good enough. I've got to do everything better than anyone else. I'm not happy with what I'm doing, but I'm not happy if I'm not doing it. And so, beloved masters, the back and forth of the egoic mind seeking to gain control, even if it's just control in your own life. Because control says, if you're happy, why are you happy? Do you have a right to be happy? And if so, should you really be that happy? And if you're not happy, then why aren't you happy? And what's wrong with you that you are not happy? And so, getting clear with yourself. Stop the control games. Stop the control games. Does that sound like control, beloved masters? You must stop your control games. Now, try to stop them. Because trying, needing, wanting, hoping but not trusting are all aspects of control. I tried to make it happen. I really need for things to work. Well, I hoped it would work the way I wanted it to. And it is that when you want it, but you don't trust it, then, beloved masters, you're probably not going to get it, whatever it is. Faith. The Master Book says faith is the evidence of things unseen. It's a feeling that you get in your solar plexus that is so powerful that even if you can't explain why, you recognize that feeling as an assurance that things are going to work in a certain way. And as you come to really have faith in yourself, in what you desire, not what you want or what you need, but what you desire, then, dearly beloved masters, you began to discover from the Lord God of your being that you have dominion over the affairs of your life. Like and don't like, want and don't want, are aspects of the two-headed dragon ego that goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with itself. I don't like that. Why? I just don't like it. But when you require yourself to get clear, why don't I like it? What is my issue with that person, that place, that thing, that situation? What are my objections? Why don't I like it? Or, even to be clear within yourself, just for your own understanding, why do I like it? What is my foundation for liking it? And it isn't about a debate. It isn't about proving anything to anyone but yourself. Because discovering the foundational understanding of your likes and your dislikes, your wants and what you don't want, you began to uncover, revelation, the control games that you play. I don't like them. I don't want them around. They don't belong in my world. And that, beloved masters, has been a societal issue for a long time. It has gone through perhaps every facet of society. It has covered race, it has covered religion, it has covered social status, it has covered monetary capabilities or the lack of. Those people don't belong in our life. Those people are you. They are aspects of you. And the control games very often attempt to keep anything or anyone that might pose what appears to be a threat out of the life. Now, why would they be a threat? If you are rich and they are poor, why would they be a threat? And the rich say because they have come to take something away from us. And so it is on the planet at this point in time. There is a polarization of fear that is occurring. We keep bringing this up because it's an important point for everyone to consider in these times. There has been developing on the planet, as the Aquarian Age has come into play, more and more people that are feeling from the Lord God of their being a desire to have freedom. Freedom not with a battle involved, but freedom gently, peacefully. Many of them really, honestly believe within themselves that everyone has a right to that freedom. And they are speaking almost a whole new language to a society that has developed itself out with a foundation that says your security is in how much money you make. And these spiritualists, these liberationists, say your foundation, your truth, your power is in knowing who you are within yourself. Because if you know who you are, then you have a very secure foundation to stand on. And those who feel that money is the measure of the man are very suspicious of someone who doesn't necessarily see money as the only worthy measure of anyone. So, those who want to hold the old line, and by the way, beloved masters, I would mention that when the illusion stopped in the mid-90s, and humanity kept running as though the illusion hadn't stopped, and humanity is still, in a good portion, attempting to live as though the illusion is still going on. And it is that those who are still attempting to control life by the standards of how things worked when the illusion was in operation want to live out there in the future. They want to keep holding the good before you, the teachings that when you die you go to heaven and that's where you get your good. So if you don't get it when you're physical, then you're bound to get it when you die. Your just rewards. But there are a lot of people that want to make absolutely sure that they get their good while they're here. But how they have gone about getting it in control is now in the energy of the becoming, in the acceleration, in quantum energy, less and less producing what once was the desired outcome. For one thing, revelation is exactly that. It's uncovering everything that is not about love. So the quote-unquote good old boys club that did things behind closed doors, the wink and nudge bunch that did things and then poked each other in the ribs, winked at each other, and chuckled and chortled over what they had done because no one would ever catch them at it. And suddenly, everything is beginning to be revealed. One thing about the new technology, everyone has a cell phone, and they're all taking pictures. And you just never know what you might be doing when someone decides to snap a picture or push the button on their cell phone and record a private speech at a tea party and then play it on YouTube or Facebook. So the control games that kept certain people in certain places are now being brought into the open. Cruelty, man's inhumanity to man, to control, domination, fear, guilt, threat, control in its most extreme form as a brutality to other people. That's an outer picturing of control. The other extreme of control is what each human being does to themselves, attempting to control their life. I would feel very good about myself, except that I'm not sure I have a right to feel good about myself. And a lot of times people will actually ask others, do you think I have a right to feel good about myself? Now, interesting that this should come up in these times, beloved masters, because these are the times where humanity is beginning to remember. Some of it may be just vague thoughts, ideas, a vision, a scenario, even just a feeling. It feels familiar, but it doesn't fit into anything today. But it feels good. It feels true, if you will allow it. So asking someone else, is it all right if I am happy? Is it all right if I'm comfortable with myself? Is, if you would, the last tattered shreds of the parental order. Mother figure, father figure, is it all right for me to be who I am? And for a long, long time, it hasn't been all right to be exactly who you are, because someone didn't like it. You bothered them. Very often not because of what you did that was wrong, but because of what you did that, as they felt into it, seemed perhaps altogether too right. A parent who prides themselves on being highly intelligent and then has a brilliant child that hasn't even gone to school yet, and yet is showing indications that potentially they could be smarter than the parent. And because of the wounds of separation, generations passing the wound on, one generation to another, the parent may feel threatened by the child. This child is too wonderful. This child is too bright. This child is too beautiful. This child is what I've always wanted to be, but I don't believe I am. And so, as soon as the threat begins to make itself obvious, the parents insidiously began to squelch the magnificent, masterful, amazing child. A beautiful child may be told that he or she is an ugly child. A brilliant child may be programmed with all you do is really dumb things. Can't you make any wise choices? A child that is highly creative may find that those around are threatened by that creativity. So that child may get a lot of, who do you think you are? And what makes you believe that you could ever do that? Control games. Conscious or unconscious. Blatant or subliminal. Control games. Control games that have passed down through generations, so that this is a planet of walking wounded emotionally because of the control games. And from the very beginning of the Church Catholic, when there was the beginning of a discovery that there might be more to this planet than people had thought, the Church Fathers began to program the parishioners. This is all you are about. If your family are farmers, then don't ever expect to be anything but a tiller of soil. If your father is a potter, then you must know that you must go into that profession. If the family is impoverished, don't ever expect to make anything of yourself. And the indoctrination of those that were in the hierarchy of the church kept the parishioners under their thumb with the control of, you don't have any right to know anything. If you have a question, you ask us. We will answer it. If we don't know the answer, we'll hold a council and we'll come up with an answer. And so people were led to believe that they had no personal power whatsoever. And then things began to change. And people began to really desire to be educated. Some of them were so courageous that they would actually go away from the place where they lived to get an education because they knew they would never be allowed to have an education where they lived. And then women began to look at what their brothers were learning, and they said, why can I not learn? And that polarity has always been there. The women who wanted to stimulate their mind, the women who wanted to go out into the world, and the women who were quite satisfied to be homemakers and mothers, and couldn't understand why their sisters would want any more than that, while the women who desired an education couldn't quite understand why their sisters wanted to stay home and not learn anything. So the polarities which inspired judgment, and judgment, dearly beloved masters, is a foundational supporter of control. And so the control games that we've spoken about have been there in families for eons of time. Whether it was outside, those who set themselves up as authorities and then told the populace how they could be, how much they could have, what they had to do, and it is, then there was the family. The father telling the family what they could do, how they could be, and oftentimes with a very strong matriarch, the mother would tell the family who they are, what they could do, what they could be or not. And children are born innocent of control, even though the church has said that a child is born into sin. Children are innocent until they are educated in control. And so, beloved masters, a child asks innocent questions because they really want to know. And control says, you don't need to know the answer. Because a companion of control is fear. And another companion of control is anger. Anger is a very thin veneer for fear. And yet, as control has become progressively more and more powerful in the illusion, anger has become the one acceptable emotion. It's all right to be angry. It's all right to fight a battle. It's all right to defeat the enemy. Now, who is this enemy, beloved masters? And that brings us back to this polarization on the planet. The free-spirited, the visionaries, those who absolutely understand from the Lord God of their being that things cannot continue to operate in the way that they have. Humanity deserves equality. Equality is not a legal action. Equality actually cannot be established until people are willing to find their equality within themselves, because if you don't believe you're equal, someone can assure you by a law that was passed that you are, and you will still act as though you are unequal. You will still live as though you have no rights of equality. And so the changes that the visionaries are perceiving are actually changes that are inspired from the inside out. Control wanted to keep everything out focused.